I can get this. All right, do you see something?
There we go.
Yes. Okay. All righty. Can you see the strategic plan, the budget? Does everybody see that?
See it?
You can. Okay. All right. So this is the 2021-22 budget. And as I like to say, whenever I do a budget, I always start with a chair in mind. And in that chair, as Mr. Licurdo so nicely said, are the kids, all sorts of kids, the AP student, the student who's in the music department, the student who is an athlete. All of those children have to inform what I do, how I begin my budget proceedings. This year, the chair looked a little different, as we know. And I'm hoping that bad boy that's around that chair next year is no longer. But as you know, this year, the chair was a little different because our athletes and our musicians and our AP students and our students who come in every day and our students with emotional issues, all of those students had to sit in a chair that looked like this because of COVID. Those costs related to COVID certainly have impacted our budget, both this year and last year. And thanks to the very good planning of the board and the previous administration, we had funds set aside that we were able to use to provide one-to-one devices to everyone, to provide the air conditioners that were previously mentioned, to provide the barriers that helped us to stay open, to be able to be open every single day, 5 days a week, K through 12. I'll talk a little more about that later. We also, as Mr. Licurdo and Mr. McLaughlin mentioned, have a tax cap. And that tax cap, even though you may hear it say 2%, of course, it isn't really 2%. It is a calculation. It's an amount. Sometimes it's over 2%, sometimes it's under. And as Mr. Licurdo did say, the average over the past few years has been 1.25. We always try to be very fiscally responsible and try to come in either at or under the cap. We have unfunded mandates. And the biggest one that I can mention is probably one that's necessary, but for example, we have to send Catholic school kids transportation for them. You have to pay for that. It's a law. The governor doesn't give us any extra money to meet that mandate. So that's what we mean by an unfunded mandate. It's a rule that we have to follow that has no money behind it. We did receive some aid, state aid, that was reduced this year. Some of our aid that we typically get, such as transportation aid, came down. And you may have read in Newsday that we're getting additional aid from the federal government, but we haven't received it yet. So that aid is not actually in this budget, except in one area that I will talk about. We also have to be very respectful of the economic factors like fixed incomes that are many of our community members have. They're on pensions. And I always like to say, you can't eat your shingles. You know, you might be house rich, but you cannot do that. You can't eat your house. So you have to be careful and make sure that our budgets respect that. And of course, all the social factors that are happening out in the world, the safety, the security constraints, and we also have to be sure that we provide enough mental health services for our kids, particularly now. We do that by talking about a plan, and you've heard me talk about this before, so I'm not going to get into it too much, except to say that we look at our instructional program, we try to build a positive culture and identity, hire the very best people we can. We have a process in place for making sure that our buildings stay comfortable so that you can have a house that grows in value, and so that our children have an education that they can find a return on investment for, Mr. McLaughlin, many years into the future. And if you're ever really bored and you want to read it, you can go online, and there it is. You can find it under the strategic plan tab. So what do you get for your money? Well, you get a lot. And we are always striving upward, forward, and onward, but we have a graduation rate of 100%. This year, we added 3 new advanced placement courses, and that's going to help us in a couple of years move up on that US News list. That's how I did it in New Hyde Park. Seminar, research, statistics, 78% of our students earned a 3 or higher on AP exams. That's another way to go up the list. And we had 17 AP scholars, 9 with honors, 18 AP scholars with distinction. And this year, for the first time, we had a national merit semifinalist who became a finalist. Actually, it's not the first time, but it's in a very long time, Kevin Waska. We don't just excel in academics, we excel in all sorts of other areas. Virtual enterprise, national competitors. We have an updated website. I think you're probably all sick and tired of reading my COVID letters, but our communication system was upgraded as well. We now have an open grade book so that you can see your child's progress, and a very, very highly ranked athletic program. For the second year in a row, we are among the best communities for music education. And the thing that I'm most proud of, and the thing that actually we will be honored for tomorrow, or our teachers will, is the 100% in-person full day instruction, 5 days a week, K-12. This didn't happen by accident. That was a community effort. All the teachers, the principals, the administrators, the students themselves had to buy into the rules that we put in place to keep people safe, so that we could have school every day and not constantly close every time there was COVID, because there was COVID, but we needed to stay open as much as we could. As long as we did so safely, we had the Department of Health's blessing. We've been doing pretty well, as you know. We haven't had much COVID lately. Every once in a while, we get a little pop. We're one of the only districts who's still testing. That's actually a good thing. We actually turned up 4 asymptomatic kids. And by doing that, by catching them early, it keeps everyone safe because they're not in the school, possibly infecting other people. So how much does that all cost? Well, it costs a lot. It's a budget of $51,594,676. The budget to budget increase, however, well, I'd never say this is a small amount. It's just over $500,000, 508,243. That's a budget to budget increase of less than 1%. It's really miraculous. When you look at what makes up that 508,243, most of it I have no control over. So the $404,795 is contractual increases. That's our salaries, our benefits for every single person in our school, and every single person in our school district touches a child in some way. Our technology services and upgrades, about $53,000. And then we have some COVID costs. And what that entails is everything from transportation to personal protective equipment, anything you can think of, because COVID still hasn't disappeared yet. And then, of course, our facilities cleaning costs, roughly 508. And let me see what else there is. Okay, we get a little help with our budget. We do get some revenue. We do get some money. We get some state and federal aid. And as you said, right underneath there, you see something called retirement reserve. So last year we borrowed from the retirement reserve $300,000 because we did receive some state aid and we couldn't balance our budget otherwise. We reduced the amount that we were going to take from the reserve, so you have to put that back, to $50,000. So that helps us in the future. There's a rainy day or we need some kind of situation like COVID ever hits again, we have money set aside to help us. And you can see our investment interest is roughly $55,000. We have no debt service transfer because we do not use bonds to create our construction. We use capital reserves, and the other income is generated from our special education program. And we also have pilots, and those are payments in lieu of taxes. So altogether, we've got $7,016,134. This does not include the federal stimulus money. When I get the federal stimulus money, we will amend the budget. We will figure out a way to spend that money on a one-time expenditure that will benefit the students. Since I do not have it, and since every once in a while, the government does not make good on its promises, I can't actually put that in the budget safely. So it's not in there. We are allowed a certain amount of money to levy the community, and we calculate that by using a growth rate. every district has a different growth rate. And this very convoluted formula you see here, it tells us that we can tax the community 44,578,542, or a 1.43% tax cap. Okay. So I always say I'm an English major, but I can do this basic math. Expenses minus the non-tax revenue equals the levy, equals what I can ask for the community. Our expenses are 51,594,676. We subtract those revenues, and that tax levy that's left over is $44,578,542. That's what we ask for from the community. It just so happens that it is 1.43%. So when that state aid comes through with the federal stimulus money, we will backfill our budget with that. Our increased spending is only just under 1%. And this is important. If you take nothing else from this, this budget maintains all current programs and services. We will be ready to open next year. If COVID's still around, we'll be ready. If it's not, we'll be even more ready. So we are prepared to open without any cuts to staff, any cuts to athletics, any cuts to music, and increased academic opportunities. Calculated levy is 1.43. The recommended levy is 1.43. This is not a year that we're recommending that we go under what we're permitted, because there's so many unknowns. Just have to look around the news, see what's happening in other countries. COVID is still with us, very much so. And we need to be prepared for that. Most importantly, this levy does not pierce the allowable limit. I can't tell you how to vote. I can't even tell you this is a great budget. All I can tell you is voting is a privilege. And it is the one thing you can do, this budget that you vote on, that I really feel has the most impact, even more so than a presidential election. You have an annual budget hearing on May 6th. And there will be a Meet the Candidates night as well, where you can meet our 3 candidates who are running for 2 board seats. And I do hope that you will hear them. And then on May 18th, from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., if you exercise your right, your privilege to vote, however you want to vote. That is that.